All right.
Okay, folks, we're getting ready to get started.
Hunter, it looks good. It's streaming off the Facebook.
And
yeah, it's streaming perfectly.
This is the Defend the Guard bill.
Real quick, are you able to give me permission to record on my end? Because I'm trying to, but it says I need
give you permission.
And we're going to start in earnest here in a few moments.
Let's see.
If not, I think as long as we have it streaming, it's good.
Yeah, and I definitely will be recording here. I'll start.
All right. So yeah, we're fine. I mean, I'm good to start if everyone else is.
Let me see. I really thought I gave you everything. Yeah, we'll go with it. I'll just have to get you. I'll get you the recording. That's all right. Okay.
I think we're good.
Good evening, Representative Kobayashi. Is that correct?
Just unmuting myself. Yeah, that's correct. That's Kobayashi. It is.
Kobayashi. Perfect. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Sorry, we're just doing the administrative moves while kind of getting things together and running. We're live on Facebook now, and I'll start recording and start things up. Just got Sam, Ron.
So the other
Administrative moves on. About 30 more seconds here, so I think we have a quorum close to it. Just wanted to see if we Hey, Ben. Hey, Representative Adams, thanks for joining us.
How are you doing, Ben?
Okay, well, we have a goodly number of folks here. I think a few more are going to join still, but
the average height of the participants just increased with Tyler showing up.
Thankfully, we're all sitting down, so we don't look so small. I'm going to start off with some opening remarks then, and I think we're all kind of friends here, but in case, I'm going to cover a few things beforehand, and of course, we are streaming live right now, so if you want to take a moment and try to share that, tweet it out, go ahead, and I'm going to hit record, so if you have anything embarrassing in the background you haven't taken care of, you can go ahead.
Scott, just before we start, I want to tell everyone that we plan on doing a the end for participants. So if anyone has any questions you think of while others are speaking, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we can go back to them at the end of the conversation.
Yeah, we'll have
Where's
the chat
Where's
set
the
up.
link for the live feed?
On the Bring Our Troops Home Facebook page.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so
Hey, Vets for Volunteerism. What's up, Dane?
hey Dane, how's it going? All right. So we just again admin note, we're live streaming now. I'm starting recording, and please try to mute your mics unless you're ready to speak. Your space bar on, do that for you, and remember to unmute when you are ready to speak, because that gets us all. That way we get a kind of nice, clean audio. If you have anything you really want to chime in, don't hesitate. This is we're pretty much open forum here, but just for control's sake, I think it's best that we kind of get attention before we dive in. So throw something in the chat or just give a hand wave before you step on somebody. We got this on. I'm going to repost this on YouTube. We've got this live streaming, and I've got an outline for us that I'm going to run through. I'm trying to organize it because I'm really overwhelmed by the sport. I mean, we've got a lot of great people I want to get a chance to speak and add in. And I'm excited because we have a really wide panel. We've got folks who help craft the bills. We've got Mike Meharry from 10th Amendment Center, who kind of specializes in reasserting states' historical roles over issues like this. We've got West Virginia Delegate Pat McGeehan here tonight, who was one of the first to introduce and implement this bill. We've got Dan McKnight from Bring Our Troops Home, who popularized the bill. And we've got a number of legislators who have supported the bill, including Kevin Craig from New Hampshire, should be joining us shortly. We've got Representative Tyler Lindholm from, forgive me, Wyoming, correct? Or is that Idaho? Wyoming. Sorry.
Brother.
I didn't have you down in my notes because and we've got Representative Dale Kobayashi from Hawaii, Ben Adams from Idaho, I believe Adrian Southworth, Senator-elect from Kentucky, and for Ben Adams of Idaho as well. So we've got a goodly number of state delegates and representatives that will be contributing for us. We have activists, Mike Rufo from New Jersey, from the New Jersey Libertarian Party, Sarah Razzi, I believe, from New Jersey Libertarians, Garrett Reppenhagen, who works with Veterans for Peace, Joe Evans, Idaho congressional candidate, just the list goes on, Sam Robb, presidential primary candidate for the Libertarian Party, Shane Hazel from the Radical podcast, and senatorial candidate from Georgia. And I'd like to note, most of us, almost all of us here tonight are veterans of the post 9/11 wars. And we have folks from the left, the right, the libertarian circle. And all of us here have really great reasons that we want to bring these wars to a close. And I'm glad we have people from kind of every orientation that have come together to collaborate and get this idea into action. We have people who oppose all wars here and people who have a more narrow scope to just these wars. Some of us have been against the war since way before it was cool. Some took like 12 years to come around, like me, and I've only gotten active in the last year. And thanks to Bring Our Troops Home, really, that mobilized me. And as we approach the 18 and 20-year mark of the Iraq War and Afghanistan War, respectively, there are still people that haven't really come around or haven't really gotten activated. And that's what we want to kind of focus on tonight, is trying to expand this circle. We've got a good core of people that have great reasons, and we've got a good idea. And how do we get it into action in more states and activate more state legislators on it? We have about an hour, hopefully tonight. We can keep going if people want to keep discussing after that. There's no reason to shut it down, but I want to respect everyone's time as well. We're going to try to first cover what is Defend the Guard for anyone who's just seeing this or hearing of this for the first time. We're going to talk to the state legislators about what brought them on board, and then discuss how to popularize the bill. I'm going to give a quick elevator speech on Defend the Guard and then invite some folks to add anything I missed or talk about the importance of it. And so Defend the Guard, you can find information about it at defendtheguard.us. It's a state level bill that seeks to reassert the state's historical role and some control of their organized militia and keep them out of, it formally says that they cannot be sent to undeclared wars. This kind of might challenge the ability of the of DOD to rely on them for these ongoing wars in the absence of a declaration of war. And historically, states did have far greater control over how their militia was used. Like going back to the War of 1812, several states refused their militia to be used outside of their states for their own defense. And even as recently as the 1980s, several state governors refused the use of their Guard abroad for different training events or working in certain countries that they felt was not beneficial to their state or the nation. And the continuous reliance on the National Guard, over-reliance, when I say post 9/11, has real domestic consequences that need to be corrected. At the peak of the war, about half of the effort in Iraq was Guard. And today, still about 18,000 are deployed each year to the CENTCOM area. 30,000 are deployed globally on a typical year. And this incurs a sort of twofold cost on a state. On the one hand, if a state's Guard is deployed overseas, they're not available to the service of that state. So in the event of Katrina, when Louisiana's Guard was largely deployed, the Guard was not available to serve that state in the event of that hurricane. And more recently, out west, with the wildfires in Oregon, at the peak of the fire season, 3 National Guard, Oregon National Guard firefighting capable helicopters were sent to Afghanistan. Those are the kind of things that you deprive a state of when you send their Guard overseas. Simultaneously, we have to cover what the Guard is. It's not the active duty military. It's the organized militia of a state that also serves as a reserve component. And that means that these aren't people that are serving full-time active duty. They have a real day job, another day job, sorry, real. And that means that and disproportionately, people who join the Guard are people that have a service orientation, that want to serve their state. And so a greater number are first responders, teachers, and serve in other capacities in their community. And when they're sent overseas, you're depriving the state of its Guard and depriving a community of people that are contributing to that community during that time. And with that said, I'd like to turn it over, I think first, Mike Meharry, if you'd like to add in anything I missed or anything that I maybe mischaracterized or anything about the importance of the bill.
No, I think you really covered it well. I think the key thing to me is the fact that the war powers have been really kind of flipped on their head. We're doing it exactly the opposite of the way the founding generation conceived it, and they conceived it the way they did for a very important reason. One of the greatest fears, if you go back to the period after the revolution, as the United States were forming, as we're ratifying a constitution, one of the greatest fears was putting too much decision-making power in the hands of one person. And you can especially see this in the debates that they had about war-making powers. They wanted Congress to make the decisions. They wanted Congress to deliberate and debate about whether or not the U.S. should move into a war. They had experience with kings who, you know, at one time or another might just get mad at somebody and decide, okay, well, we're going to go off to war. They didn't want that kind of decision making in the power of a single person, and that's exactly the system that we now have. And this bill is a way for states to kind of push back and say, look, we need to reestablish the proper constitutional balance of power here by forcing Congress to do its job and actually declare war. One thing that I think is important to cover is the distinction between an actual declaration of war and these authorizations to use military power that we primarily see military actions taking place under today. They are subtle but different. An actual declaration of war, Congress deliberates, they decide we are going to war. They tell the president we are declaring war on Afghanistan or Iraq or whoever it is. And then the president's role is simply to execute that war, to do the things administratively, executively, to make sure that that war is prosecuted. The decision-making process under an AUMF basically gives the president all of the decision-making discretion. Congress says, you know what, we're going to let you decide whether or not you want to go to war, and if you decide it's a good idea, we're going to let you do it. It's in effect that the Congress is delegating its constitutional responsibility to the executive branch. This is a violation of basic contract law. You can't go delegating your delegated powers off to somebody else. So it's a very much a broken system, and that's one of the things that I really love. Kind of big picture about this bill is it's a way for states to actually push back and help reassert this constitutional balance that we should actually have and take this decision-making away from a single individual, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or Barack Obama or whoever happens to be in the White House. I think it's very important. Our efforts to get Congress to change things has been pretty much an utter failure, so we have to force their hand. Congress likes the idea of being able to say, well, we're going to let the president make the decision, because then if it goes bad, like it did in Iraq, they can all sit back and say, well, we never realized how bad it was going to be, and we would have never voted. We would have never let the president make that, whatever. So it's a way to restore a balance of power. It's a way for states to assert their sovereignty and their control. And then I think from just an even bigger picture level, James Madison said that the biggest threat to liberty was war, because all of the germs of tyranny come out of war. You have taxes, you have expansions of executive power, and even went on to say that you have this degeneration of morals and ethics that happen when you're in a constant state of warfare. And Madison concluded this little essay, it was an essay called Helveticus. He concluded by saying that no country can remain free if it's in a perpetual state of war. And we've seen the effects of this, everything from the surveillance state coming home, the police militarization at home, the higher taxes, the spending, the debt, all of these things come out of these endless wars. And I think anybody who really cares about liberty, who cares about individual autonomy, I think should support this type of legislation to kind of rein in the overreach that we're seeing coming from the federal government with all these undeclared wars. So I think it's a very powerful, very important bill. I think it's on solid constitutional ground. It forces a constitutional consideration of war powers. It puts it back in the hands of Congress. It forces them to debate it, because otherwise they're not going to be able to utilize these resources. So it's a way that we can push back without having to beg Joe Biden or Mitch McConnell to do the right thing. So that's my summation there.
I really appreciate that, Mike. And I should note, the reason I chose this evening in particular is that this was one of the last time, December 8th was one of the last times we declared war. We subsequently declared war on the 11th against Germany and Italy. And there was this quaint notion in the past where even in June, we decided we had to go to the trouble of declaring war against Hungary of 1942, 79 years ago, that we had to go to the trouble of declaring war against each state. And now these wars can metastasize endlessly. And the other thing noteworthy is this evening we're recording the Congress yet again authorized overwhelmingly an NDA that will continue and keep us mired. And with that makes it even more important that we push this forward. And again, we're just going to try to quickly cover what the bill is, because a lot of the folks here are familiar. But Pat and Dan, if you'd like to take a moment to add in anything important we missed or about the importance of the bill.
Well, I think one aspect of the bill's importance is just the fact that you're able now to take this framework at a state level within the state legislative body and have meaningful conversations and debates, on a state house floor or a state senate floor, and it gives you that ability to carry on this dialogue that's very important about all these endless wars, which before, debating foreign policy within a state level legislative branch or legislature in general, it just wasn't plausible. Well, now this gives us an opportunity and a venue to do it through. And so I think the conversation itself and the debate itself is very valuable to keep it in front of the public limelight, especially as we are able to pull more and more states into introducing it in their own chambers and their own legislatures. So that's one aspect of it. And I think, Mike hit on an important concept. The problem, really goes back to, the founders always assumed that peace for the most part would be the norm or the status quo. And when the country went to war, it was going to be a rare and last resort type of thing. And since, public assemblies are so slow to act, this would ensure that war would be rather rare. And, that's no longer the case, because now war is essentially the norm. And constant war is, the status quo. And so it's hard to reverse this long-standing situation with elected legislatures, especially in Washington, D.C., since many elected politicians within the Beltway benefit from this constant military spending. And that's something that can be opposed at the state level because, by and large, state level representatives or state senators in the state legislatures or state assemblies, they're just a little bit more immune to that kind of influence from the national security state. They're not as corrupted yet, and they don't have the kind of ties to those sort of lobbyists who are promising, funds for their districts, whether it be a new base or keeping one of these military bases open, or a number of other sort of, I don't want to say bribe, but yeah, I'll say bribe. And, so, I mean, I think this is a decentralized approach that is very promising. And I think this is really the only way to attack the problem. Just from my experience, I've introduced this bill 6 times now, and coming up in February, it'll be the 7th time I've introduced it. The last 2 years, I've gained the most traction with it. I think I have the record for the most tie votes in a House debate on the House floor, at least in the last 20 years. Because every time I've moved to discharge this bill and debate it, it's always ended up with a 50-50 tie. There's 100 state reps in the West Virginia House, and so it's been a little bit discouraging. But I mean, it generates a lot of news, and just the fact that if you take this bill and you really prioritize it, and you go to the mat with it and don't budge on it, keep pushing it, it really starts resonating with people, and it gains a lot of attention in the news and the media, and it starts a conversation, and people start thinking, well, why can't we just have a vote? I thought that's how it was supposed to work. What do you mean we don't have a vote taken by our elected officials? And so we win with this concept in the court of public opinion, and that's why you will see that the forces strongly opposed to this bill, the Defend the Guard bill, do all of their oppositional work behind the scenes because they really don't have a good argument to make in public. And so we really, as long as we keep pushing it from a principled perspective in the public limelight, we can win at the end of the day in the court of public opinion. So it's very important to me. I think there's a number of facets that it can be effective combating, that we'd all be in agreement with. And so, I'm dedicated to the cause, and I'll keep pushing here. And so hopefully we'll gain a little bit more traction. My goal this coming session would be to at least get it out of one chamber, the House chamber, and have a successful passage of the bill out of the House. I don't know if I'll be able to get it through the state Senate, but you know, getting it out of one chamber is I'd say some major progress.
Yeah. And I think you highlighted another aspect of it. That's important is there isn't usually discussion at the state level, but that's important because state legislators often become federal, often have higher aspirations, let's say, and getting a feel for where they stand is valuable to all of us that care about this issue. And last, to just kind of cover on the importance of the bill before we get to the real meat, which is going to be, how do we get more legislators on board? Dan, do you have anything you'd like to add about the importance of the bill and the ideas behind the bill?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Scott, for putting this on. This is fantastic. Like Pat mentioned, he's run this bill 6 times. Tyler ran it last year in Wyoming. Representative Kobayashi ran it in Hawaii. I think we had somebody run it in Iowa last year, and it didn't get out of committee. The process is important. And like Pat just talked about, that the public they're not aware of how a bill is really passed. They think it's the PBS special, I'm just a bill up on Capitol Hill, but that's not exactly how it works. And bringing to light the process, and it's actually a condemnation of the process, is part of this fight, that a single member of a committee shouldn't have the ability to kill legislation that's brought forward by a duly elected representative of the people. And we're finding in so many states that these senior representatives and state senators that have been in office just long enough to maintain their chairmanship have the ultimate authority on whether something gets out of committee and onto the floor. And in Idaho, we have kind of an archaic system. You have to get permission to get the bill even printed. You have to have a print hearing. And one person controlled that last year, and he stonewalled it and slow-walked it. And ultimately, it died because of COVID. We got it through his committee through a little bit of pressure. But it's a condemnation on the process. And Mike, you talked about Congress not being overly interested in reclaiming that authority, that enumerated power. And the reason they don't want to is, well, for one, we've been in war for 20 years. And 85% of the representatives that voted for the original authorization of the use of military force back in 2001 aren't even serving in Congress anymore. 85%. So 15% of the Congress that's there now, they don't care about it because it's not their war. They didn't authorize it. They didn't fund it to begin with. They didn't put their name on the line. They're not the ones that have abdicated their role and responsibility. It's not their war. But for everybody on this call that's a veteran, anybody that has skin in the game, this is our war. If we don't do something about it, we're going to be passing it off to our children or our grandchildren, or God forbid, our great-grandchildren. There's already 3 generations of Americans fighting in this war, right? Somebody that was about to retire when the war started could have had a son fighting in the war who was 18, who is now 38, who has a son that's fighting in the war at 18. We have a 3-generation war, and Congress will never do anything about it. They're not going to reclaim that power. They don't want that responsibility, so the states have to do it. And it's up to us to give our governors the power and the authority to act on behalf of the citizens of the state and say enough is enough. If you want to take our citizen soldiers, our teachers, our mechanics, our tradesmen, our doctors, our pilots that serve as citizens in our state, and you want to take them to go fight in some godforsaken country in Africa or the Middle East, then you better put your name on the line first, and then get your butt back to your home state and explain to your constituents why you voted that way. And that's how we, the people, will take back that authority from Congress. To hell with Congress, right? We have to do this at the state level. And that's why bringing our troops got involved in this. And somebody just put a bug in my ear about 2 years ago about this legislation, and I looked it up, and we found Pat McGeehan had run it. We found the 10th Amendment Center had already written the legislation, and it started as an idea, and it's snowballing to what we have now. And I really think with the support of everybody that's on here and the representatives that we're recruiting on a daily basis, I think we're going to get it introduced in over 25 states in the next legislative session. And that gives people the confidence and the backbone and the strength to stand up, because they're not going to be fighting it alone. Pat's been doing this alone for too long. We've got to have his back, right? If 25, 26, 30, 35, 40 states push this legislation, the chances of it getting passed somewhere is significant. And we know we're going to have opposition, right? Pat faced, he was your adjutant general that came down to the Capitol building in his Class A dress uniforms with his medals hanging off like Colonel Jessup from A Few Good Men, and put pressure on Pat in his office, right? When we tried to run it in Wyoming last year, we brought Senator Rand Paul out, and Rand Paul's best friend, Liz Cheney, sent word down to the Wyoming State House that she was going to personally see to it that they took away C-130 aircraft from the Wyoming National Guard and sent them to another state. Tyler Lindenholm said the best line I've ever heard him say. It was fantastic. He said, if saving one Wyoming National Guardsman from having to go to war and dying in some godforsaken land in an unauthorized war cost me a trinket or a token or some shiny airplane, take your damn airplanes. All right? And that's the opinion we have to have. Your threats mean nothing to us. All right? We, the people, have the authority, not you and your trinkets. And the other opposition we had in Idaho, the Adjutant General from the state of Idaho sat down with me and our Lieutenant Governor, Janice McGeehan, and State Representative Tammy Nichols and talked about this bill. It's pretty impressive that we can get an Adjutant General, a one-star, two-star general to come into an office and talk about proposed legislation. It tells you we're on the right track. It's got their attention. All right, so everybody, we just need to buttress each other. Kevin Craig's going to run it. He's already introduced it up in New Hampshire. I'm glad to see you on the call now, Kevin. Welcome. I'm going to turn it back over to Scott. I'm just glad everybody's here, and let's do this thing.
That's great. Yeah, thanks. And that's so we have a great number of we want to get it on the board in as many states as we can. That's what this is all about. And the reason I really, the driving force behind me, like begging out to get this thing together and putting it together, is that I've been working as hard as I can to try to get some attention from my state's legislators and get it on the board here. And so with that, I want to hear from the state legislator we have on the call. What got your attention? How did you get on board? And I'm just going to try to go from, I'm going to do myself a little geography test and hopefully I don't mess up, but maybe east to west, starting with Representative Kobayashi. And then I'll work my way east from there. West to east. I already messed it up. West to east. And so Representative Kobayashi, if you'd like to sort of share how did you first learn about this bill, and were you immediately on board or reluctant, and what kind of brought you over? Or did you just tell me about what you know?
Sure, be happy to. So it's really just your efforts to reach out to state legislators. That's how I found out what your efforts were doing. And my impetus has basically been a lot of what Patrick had been referring to, that I got issues with our national foreign policy, but yet I sit in the state legislature, and it's difficult for me to express my anxiety about what we do in foreign policy through legislation here. This is one way I could really express that. And it was something that's kind of easy for us to do here. So I would have, I had it passed through the House of Representatives, very little opposition, actually none. And I had already set it up with people in the other chamber in the Senate for it to pass. Well, one senator ended up coming down positive with COVID, and which is what it is. But leadership decided to suspend session in this past year, 2020. So no bills passed, but this would easily have passed. And I got it again. I'm going to be teeing up this year in Hawaii, and it's not going to be quite as easy. I think, like a lot of people you might be familiar with, our legislature is very kind of surface oriented when it comes to partisan issues, and they basically look at any issue that has some national impact and decide whether that fits in with their hatred of the president. So, and last year it did, because it was kind of framed as, well, you have Congress that should have the right to declare, and you have the executive branch. Well, in a state where we got 71 Democrats and 4 Republicans in our state legislature, it was pretty easy to sell that, okay, you're going to go with Congress, and they're all there. So it was pretty easy to do. Now, the partisans are going to be a little difficult to sell on that basis with Democratic president. But I mean, at the end of the day, I just don't go there, and I think it'll be easy to pass. I mean, it's there's we're the one state that has ever been attacked by a foreign power. So there is kind of a different sensitivity to the need for military action relative to being the world's policeman versus having somebody fly over here and like bomb a bunch of ships in a harbor. So I think because we've been experienced with the real impetus for war here being 80 years ago, at Pearl Harbor, then I think it's a little bit easier for us to get people to get behind that. Okay, for kind of what we're doing now with our foreign adventures, it's just really not of the magnitude that we should be doing that in the first place. But if you want to have something to say about it, let's let Congress have a say on it the way the Constitution says we should. And that's what I'm going to be talking about this year. And I would bet any amount of money that we're going to pass it here in Hawaii. And I think there's different issues that we look at here relative to the 48 contiguous states that an issue like this, if we have the right person pushing it, and in this state it's going to be me, it'll get done. And it'll just be a kind of me carrying it over the goal line is pretty much what I anticipate happening. And unless some other legislator gets COVID in the middle of session, we'll have a bill here in Hawaii. Or unless well, who knows what the governor's going to do? I mean, he vetoes odd things, but I think I can get it passed through the legislature anyway this year.
That's fantastic news. That's really exciting because I really, that's a good start of hope for us with that we know that we have one state that we feel solid about. And that's what I really thought here in Maryland. As soon as I learned about this bill, I was like, we've got a Democratic supermajority. We've got, and this should be a slam dunk. And that's where really I was surprised that I didn't really, maybe I started a little late in the game last year and I didn't really start until November because I only discovered this in November, but I really thought it was going to be a slam dunk. All I need to get is my one delegate to be on board, and the rest and the dominoes will fall. And I'm still hoping that's the case. I just haven't found that one delegate who's on board with me yet. So I'm going to try to keep moving and moving a little bit further east. I think we got Idaho, and from Idaho we have Ben Adams, correct? And again, if anyone has any questions or wants to add, just wave or throw up your hand in the chat. This isn't exclusive. I'm just trying to provide a little order and keep things moving productively. Thank you, Representative Kobayashi. I hope I didn't cut you off. You have nothing else to add. Okay, great. So then I think Ben Adams, Representative Adams from Idaho. Would you like to add anything about how you learned about the bill and what we're going to take to move it over the hump in Idaho? Pass on that. If you'd like to come back around later, that's fine. Oh.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Okay. I have a terrible connection. Sorry, we haven't got that, fiber optics yet. So yeah, I found out about the bill. I met Dan a year and a half, 2 years ago. I don't remember. Seems like forever now. And we started talking about this concept of ending these forever wars, as President Trump had called them. And, both of us had served in Afghanistan. So it was, like Dan said, we feel a personal attachment to this. And so, after talking about it for a little bit, we came to some sort of conclusion that, look, it has to come from the bottom up. It has to come from the body close to the people, and that's the state legislature. And Pat in West Virginia, I just want to say thank you for pushing this for so long. You've got a lot of reinforcements now. So
I appreciate that, Ben.
And we're gonna be pushing it here in Idaho. This is my first term in the legislature. I'm not quite sure how far I'll be able to make it go, but you aim for the stars and settle for the moon.
I will say something if you can hear me. Can you guys hear me still?
Yep.
I will say just something real quick. As many states as we can get this bill introduced in, it's going to spread the Pentagon's resources thin, because these different adjutant generals who are in charge of those National Guard units that are technically under the state governor's purview are also have some sort of dual loyalty legally to the Pentagon. And I mean, behind closed doors, the Pentagon, I know for a fact, the last 2 years worked very hard alongside the Adjutant General of the West Virginia Guard, along with some others, to try to crush the momentum over about 4 or 5 week period. And so the more states that we have, and the more state reps that are committed to introducing this bill, throughout the typical season for regular sessions, in the state legislatures throughout the union, the more we can possibly spread their oppositional strategy very thin. And I think that's pretty critical.
That's great. And yeah, I think that is, the more states we have on board, the stronger signal it sends. It does a lot to have as many states as possible. It blunts their threats to move things around. They can only steal C-130s from one state and give them to another if the other state isn't on board too. It wouldn't be much of a punishment then,
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. And I'll just add real quick, with this COVID-19 pandemic that we've all been dealing with, it's very surreal in some respects. This entire past year, in my state, I don't know what the exact number is, but it's an extremely high percentage of all of the West Virginia National Guard units are out of the country, overseas. I think some of them are doing peacekeeping missions in Iraq and in Kuwait. And I know through several different reliable sources that just as of 3 or 4 weeks ago, they are out of National Guard resources and members to perform this typical COVID-19 duty, where they'll go in and pass out food to, elementary school kids because schools, not being attended in person. And instead of National Guardsmen going in and handling things of that nature at home, typically older women who are sort of in the school service personnel line of work are having to do it, who are more vulnerable, of course, to the virus. So, I mean, it's just had an effect on, the typical mission that the National Guard was really designed with. That is to respond to domestic emergencies.
And that really that's one of the big things is domestic policy foreign policy is domestic policy. Ultimately, it affects us domestically, no matter what we do. Right. I think next geographically, again, sorry, that's the random way to do it, but Representative Lindholm from Wyoming. And then after that, I'm going to try to get to Ben Adams Ron Ferguson from Ohio, I believe will come after that. There's a big beef between Ohio and Kentucky, so I don't know who wants to fight it out between Ohio and Adrian Southworth of Kentucky. But let's just keep it rolling. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, Dan, we got some work to do. Wyoming doesn't border Ohio or Kentucky. That's a damn problem.
No. I was saying after you.
No, I know, I get it. It's just the fact that we're going from Wyoming to Ohio means we got a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of shades.
Stay with me, Scott. God damn it. So, I'm out come January 1st in the Wyoming legislature. I was the majority whip for a couple of years there. Had a good time. Did 6 years in the Wyoming legislature. Dan and his guys got a hold of me a couple of years ago and said, "Hey, we're going to do this in Wyoming." And we were looking at Wyoming, and you're the only guy that endorsed Rand Paul and Ron Paul. What do you think about this? And so they pegged me. It was a good fit. And we started running the ball, and boy, did we run into a hump in Wyoming. Who would have thought Liz Cheney would have been pro-war? I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
So we ran into a little bit of an issue there where we had our federal delegation, to include the Pentagon, getting a hold of the Speaker of the House and other folks and making worrisome comments. And so that was a big bummer. And it's a hard push. As a lot of you guys know that have experience in policy or have experience in the state legislature, anytime you're doing something wild, I mean, this is why I dig Representative Kobayashi so much being on here. And I can predict where Representative Kobayashi is on most of his votes. He's just like the rest of us. You're all radicals. You might be radical right or radical left. But the reality is it's never the guys and gals that are doing the deep thinking that are the problem on this. It's the folks that don't think about these issues that are the problems when it comes to voting on this, because it's so much easier to go along to get along. And indeed, on so many different issues, that is a continuation of an existing problem, and to include this piece of legislation. There's a lot of folks that, well, Tyler, I never really thought of it that way. Well, I thought you read the Constitution. Hell, you swore on it when you got this office. And so it gets to be a really big problem. But just running the bill, just running it, puts it out there. I mean, in the state of Wyoming, we saw numerous pieces of good press that came out on it. Lots of good folks reaching out, lots of other veterans from throughout the state of Wyoming that wanted to have that conversation. And why not? Why not the state legislature? We're still somewhat, as I like to tell people, I don't hold much confidence in Congress anymore. But the state legislatures, you still debate things. You still shake it out on the floor. You still get a bloody nose every now and then. And so I've really got a lot of faith in that. And I think there's going to be, I'm pumped. Representative Kobayashi's got that much faith. I'm going to be rooting from you all the way from Wyoming. I won't root for you when we're playing football, which, by the way, I guess I should remind you, Wyoming did beat Hawaii again this year. They flew.
Back to the Titans, really.
Come on, Pat.
I'm just kidding.
Josh Allen. Everybody knows who that guy is now. We got one.
True.
But I do think it's really important to concentrate on that when you're getting ready to run. If you haven't run this bill before, or any kind of radical bill, it's important to look at that bipartisan nature of this, because chances are, whether you're a deep red state or a deep blue state or whatever you might be, there's a lot of work that can be done across Ohio where we've got this shared ideal of upholding the Constitution. And it's pretty fantastic. And legitimately, we are 19 years in at this point. So there's a lot of folks that, if they do think about it for a little bit, will flip on this. And that's the important work that can be done just by even presenting the bill or just even getting it numbered. It's so important. It is, shoot, this last year, Wyoming, we died on just an introductory vote. That was it. Introductory vote, no committee, no debate, no nothing. Now, granted, the Pentagon have been working over hours to get that done. My kids are causing a ruckus. Sorry about that. But anyways, that's all I got to say, unless anybody's got any questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and that it gets us media. It gets it talked about, and you really hit something that I should have hit from the very beginning. There's bipartisan support for bringing the troops home. It's a popular decision, which is another reason why it's so shocking that it's so hard to do. I guess. Let's see. Representative Ferguson, if you would like to just tell us how you learned about the bill and what brought you to support it.
Sure. So Ron Ferguson from Ohio. Actually, my district is connected to Delegate McGeehan. So there's a bridge that separates the two of us. So, but anyway, but what brought it to my attention was I was at Yale's Hazlitt Coalition last month in November. Heard about it then. I worked for Americans for Prosperity for 5 years. A lot of that work was through the sister organization Concerned Veterans for America, which in the last couple of years has really been pushing to repeal the AUMF. And so I've done a lot of grassroots work on that, lobbied Congress and other things. And we know how hard that's going to be. Nevertheless, it's, as we heard a second ago, it's great to shoot for the stars, settle for the moon. So maybe this is the moon right here, and we get it started in the states first, then we'll worry about Congress after that. So that is kind of where I'm coming from.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
And,
Ron, are you over in Steubenville? Is that your district or?
Yeah, I actually live in Wintersville, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I go to grad school part-time over at Franciscan.
Yep, it's in my district. So,
Awesome. Excellent. We'll have to get together sometime.
sure thing.
that's great. That's another reason I really wanted to do this, is to make the connections. Like, it was only on another kind of Zoom thing that I'd met Mike Rufo, who we're going to get to shortly. And we started strategizing together, and he's, not that far up the road from me. And I just didn't know he was working and pushing in the same direction in his state. Senator Southworth, if you're interested in sharing what you learned about the bill and how you learned about it and what brought you here.
Yes, sir. Hey, guys. So I'm officially west of Representative Ferguson, it appears. Since
Yeah,
he's over
I realized that when he said what part
West
of Idaho.
Virginia.
Sorry.
I was going to say, no, it's debatable. We're both I'm underneath of that state, so it depends on where he's from. I'm actually right in the middle, south of Cincinnati. So I was reached out to by somebody. I don't think he's on here. If he is, sorry about that. Anyway, friend of a friend, and I see Ted Patterson's on here, so I'm going to call him out because Ron just mentioned the Hazlitt Coalition. I'm a member of the Hazlitt Coalition as well. And I met 4 wonderful new people from West Virginia who are newly elected at the Hazlitt Coalition, and made friends with one of them who is a neighbor of Kentucky. So anyway, hopefully they can help there, and that's cool. We have a neighbor. You guys are actually have been working on this for so long. But I'm familiar with a variety of the issues surrounding this. I hadn't heard that this was even being done, but I had a constituent ask a few years ago, can we do something? And I'm sitting here like, that is the most mammoth task. I mean, I would love to see it done. It's a bucket list item, but how in the world is, little me going to actually push something like that up the hill? So sometimes we have to pick battles, right? And so it just never got to the front burner. And honestly, it's still not on the front burner, but this Zoom meeting right here is awesome because this helps me actually reprioritize and go, okay, maybe this is something I can actually get somewhere and do something. And so, like you said, we want to get as many states introducing as possible. And I'm all for that. I like that a lot. So I never wanted to be the person that introduced bills and left them sitting there. And I don't plan to necessarily leave it sitting there, but I'm thinking we at least need to do something, even if it's not, all in 100%. And I'm rounding up literally the troops to get this totally done. But I want to maybe start this conversation, and I could have some other guys help round up the troops and see how far we can get. So.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. I'm glad to see that this has actually had a productive sort of result already, which is awesome.
I'm going to actually jump in here, though, real quick. I didn't finish the thought. And I have like 500 questions already, which I know we don't have time to deal with all of those right now. But I'm very in the weeds. But I mentioned several different pieces that have all played into this. So one, of course, I was a state coordinator for Ron Paul's campaign in 2008. That first kind of alerted me to foreign policy details and where it maybe needs to land. I am obviously young. I was in high school when we started this war. And President Bush, at first I believed him, and then I started catching his lies because I like to listen to his speeches, and we started lying and telling things wrong. I thought, wait a second. And so then that kind of turned me off. So I came to this, though, a little bit later than this thing started. But the critical pieces, weeds-wise, I worked for the lieutenant governor, and I've spent lots of time with our adjutant general. Of course, he's not there anymore because our governor's changed, and so we have a new one. But I'm just saying, like, I have spent a lot of time, shoulder to shoulder in so many times with that guy that you're talking about. We got the 8 new C-130s a couple years ago. Like, we've talked about the whole federal and state issue. Like, I know some of the some of the logistics that you guys are probably dealing with, and I really want to hear what they've said to you, how they've said it, who's been talking to who, knowing exactly what I'm getting up against and figuring out how we can get around it or over it or whatever we need to do. So I'll ask these questions later, but that's something that I have a very big interest in.
Excellent. And Dan dropped in the chat some contact info, and we'll be sure to make sure that everyone's in touch. I'm sorry, we are kind of coming up on the hour again. I want to respect people's time. So we have, I believe, one more person, Kevin Craig of New Hampshire. I hope I'm not missing anyone. And then I want to get to some of our activists who have been trying to popularize it in different states as quickly as we can. So I'm sorry to shortchange, but I want to keep moving. Mr. Craig, Representative Craig.
Hi, thanks for the invitation. I first found out about the project when I was invited to go to the Bring Our Troops Home conference in D.C. last November. That's where I met General Bolduc. I actually flew down on the plane with him. Met Dan, Pat, Tyler, lots of other great people. So, yes, I introduced the bill for the 2021-22 session in New Hampshire. Our process is a little different in New Hampshire. All bills are actually written by the Office of Legislative Services. So I provided them with the topic and the language from the 10th Amendment Center. And I have yet to get the draft back. But once I do get the draft back, I'll refine it, make sure that it covers what I wanted to cover. In New Hampshire, no one person can kill a bill except the sponsor. Every bill gets a public hearing in committee, then gets a committee executive session, and then it's voted on to either the consent calendar or come to the floor for a standalone vote on its own. Every bill gets voted on in New Hampshire. So it is a little bit of a different system here. I've been behind the idea since I left active duty in 1989. I was a Cold War veteran stationed in Germany. When I started working for the Federal Bureau of Prisons in 1991, I had a friend there who, from the Texas National Guard, who was deployed so long, so often, that he would no longer be eligible to retire from the Bureau of Prisons before he turned too old. And so he just stayed in on active duty Guard and Reserve in the Texas National Guard and retired from there as Command Sergeant Major. Last year, right after the DC conference, I did request from our point of contact in the New Hampshire National Guard what our deployment numbers were. And he very quickly, kindly provided, since 9/11, more than 3,300 New Hampshire National Guard soldiers and airmen have been deployed overseas in support of combat and peacekeeping operations. General Army deployments range from 9 to 15 months. Air deployments were typically 3 to 6 months in duration. They enlist 90 to 91 and 1995. But since 2001, there has not been a time when New Hampshire National Guard or Air National Guard were not deployed overseas. That's up through the 2019-2020 Inherent Resolve, which is a 12-month deployment for 238th Medevac Company, multiple locations in the Middle East with 80 soldiers. I've requested an update for since then, but from 2001 into 2020, New Hampshire Guard soldiers and airmen have been deployed at some point overseas continuously. And that's just destroyed our stateside peacetime readiness for national disasters. We're trying so hard right now. Our state veterans home had a huge outbreak of COVID-19. They don't have staff. They've put out an emergency call for volunteers, medical licensed and unlicensed positions. That's normally something our National Guard would step right into, but our medics are overseas. That happened in my county nursing home. Every county has a county nursing home here. in all 10 counties. In my county, we actually have both a nursing home and a nursing hospital. And our nursing hospital had a terrible outbreak with multiple deaths. And all our National Guard could do was show up to administer tests. So, yes, it's a problem. I've been a pro-peace, anti-war soldier as a veteran. Just like during my career in law enforcement, I was against the war on drugs and still am. And fortunately in New Hampshire, we have a large Liberty coalition in the State House of Representatives. So I have people who are just waiting to jump on this bill as soon as I get the language back. And we'll see where it goes from there. Who knows what will happen, if we pass it in the House, who knows what will happen in the Senate. If it passes in the Senate, who knows what the governor will do with it. I'm already off of his Christmas card list over voting to overturn some of his vetoes in the past, even though we're of the same party. But yes, I look forward to seeing this come forward. And it's going to be a very different session, obviously. Lots of things will be done online instead of in person. But I look forward to having the hearings and getting it out there. And I thank all of you who have been behind it before now. I'm a relative latecomer, like I said, just joined last November, but I'm fully on board.
Thank you, Representative Craig. That's awesome. And so I think that and please forgive me. I had so many people, we're hitting the hour now. And I don't have a heart out, but I respect anyone who does. So anyone who has a heart out that has not gotten to add something, please just let me know real quickly in the chat, and I'll bring you up real quick to add your piece in so we don't miss anything. Otherwise, I'm going to try to maybe bump an extra 20 minutes in here, and I think we can get the real meat out, because the next thing I want to cover is sort of how do we popularize this bill. And what I've heard from the yes, Sarah. So I'll bring you up. And thank you, Mike. Okay. So I got two people that have a heart out that I'm going to bring in a second. So actually, I'll just go ahead. Sarah, why don't we bring you in, and then Mike Meharry, and then we'll kind of move into the next segment real quick.
Okay, so hi, my name is Sarah Razi. I'm the New Jersey State Chair at Young Americans for Liberty. So what YAL does in order to help get bills passed is by forcing our members at YAL to engage within volunteering. So what we do is that we hire these people to phone bank and pressure our representatives in several states and help get this bill passed. So lately we have passed a bill called a free speech bill in Ohio, and we basically rammed every single representative's phones and emails, and we helped get that bill passed in Ohio. So that's why I believe it is very important that we have young people, especially young adults, in the background and helping getting this bill passed, because yes, we don't know what's going to happen in the House or the Senate. What we need to do is that we need to pressure these people from the back end in order for them to pass this bill. And in order to bring power back, in order to bring the correct response back to Congress, in order to stop unconstitutional wars, we need to pressure those in Congress to do the right job. And we need to stop allowing the executive branch to declare these wars without congressional approval.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, and that's something I actually really I was trying. It was one of my next steps, and that's another place where I have to find the inroads. As I was trying to get to the college Democrats, the campus, the Young Americans for Liberty in my state, and I haven't. I probably just using Oldster communication to get a hold of them or something, but I'll figure it out. So Mike Meharry, I want to thank you and give you a moment to speak, and then Garrett, I'm going to bring you up next, and so Mike. Please.
Yeah, first off, thanks to everybody who is involved in this. This is so cool. When I first started with the 10th Amendment Center, which has been 11 years ago now, we had this idea kind of sitting there on the back burner, and and then Pat kind of had introduced it kind of in a parallel way. And we're like, oh, cool, somebody else, has this idea. And now to see all of these people that are pushing this piece of legislation, it thrills my soul. The one thing that I wanted to say real quick, I have written a pretty extensive FAQ that I can make available to all of y'all. See, now that's Adrian. I'm actually from down the road from you in Lexington, Kentucky. That was my Kentucky roots coming out there, all y'all.
Very good to see you, Mike.
Yes, but I do have an FAQ, and it's very detailed. It goes through the constitutional issues in terms of the formation of the militia. Is the National Guard the militia? And it gets actually all the way into some of the Supreme Court cases that have been around on this issue. So that's available. My email address is in the chat. Please feel free to hit me up. Shoot me an email. I'm more than happy to talk in person, do whatever I can to especially support you legislators as we move through this process and start dealing with some of the opposition that's going to come up. So just wanted y'all to know that that's available. And again, just thank you everybody so much for being involved in this. It's so exciting to see this kind of movement going on. So y'all are awesome.
Thank you, Mike. We really appreciate it. So yeah, I would real quick. That's what we want to transition into is popularizing this. And what we've heard from some state legislators is like it just took getting their ear, kind of getting in the room with them. And I'm just going to list out all the things that I've tried so far in my state as sort of a jumping off point for ideas. And just because I tried them and they didn't work, it could be my own failing, not a failure of the tactic. But for me, thus far, I've tried. Let's see. First thing I did, I wrote the best email I ever wrote individually to every state legislator I could find that I thought I could connect to somehow. My locals, the heads of my state senate, the head of my, I tried letter writing. Got that's interesting was the best reply I got. I tried. I went to their fundraisers and I tried to get their ear and cocktail chatter, moving along. I've tried spreading on podcasts. I've written op-eds. I've contacted local journalists with more emails. I've tweeted more than would be healthy and reasonable for any person to have done in the last year. At them, around them, subtweeted them, you name it. I've gone to Vets for Peace meetings and worked with them as well, trying to get it moving out to expand the circle. And we have Garrett Reppenhagen here. That's the thing I think we need to do. We need to find some new. The one thing I learned meeting with folks from Vets for Peace is they have a long history of different types of activism than what I'm familiar with. And I think maybe there's something they wanted to go to the state house. They wanted to confront the governor, and maybe that's a way forward. Not to say that we didn't try that with going to Capitol Hill, bring our troops home to that awesome Capitol event, that kind of where I first really engaged with this. But Garrett, I'd like to hear from you, like what your thoughts on other ways of activism that work, that have been successful for you, and what your thoughts on the concept are in general as well.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's an honor to be on the call here with everybody. I'm very new to this issue, but it's one that I think that Veterans for Peace get behind for a lot of different reasons. I served as a U.S. Army Cavalry Scout, a sniper in Kosovo and Iraq. I've been honorably discharged since 2005. I'm the first post 9/11 veteran to have the position of Executive Director for Veterans for Peace. The organization's been around since 1985 and really got its roots from the Vietnam Veterans Against the War. And 10 years after the official end of the Vietnam War, many of them continued their activism and formed Veterans for Peace. So it's been around for a long time, and it's a grassroots street activist oriented organization. So we're a 501c3, which we lack some of the teeth of some C4s and political action committees out there. But we definitely make it up with some street presence, and we have a lot of autonomous, very active local organizations, local chapters, all throughout the world. Actually, we're an international organization, so we have chapters all over the world. So, I think this bill is super critical. I think that limiting the use of the National Guard to become federalized to be used overseas, which many of you mentioned here, but also being used domestically as well. You know, we've seen the threats of organizing for out-of-state National Guards to respond to civil rights, racial justice uprising movements all throughout the country. So the radical left is also interested in looking at this bill, and I would like to say that we would be some sort of balance that we could get into the ear of this partisan situation and talk to Democrats, but most of them consider us the radical left and say, oh shit, here comes Veterans for Peace. So whatever we can do, I'm excited to do it. Yeah, I think I think we do have to look at how we can create more more shared across the aisle participation in this bill. And I think if we could do that, we could have some success in these 50-50 splits. We could start breaking them in certain states. So we'd love to get active and get behind it. Obviously, our public education and our direct action muscles can be used in certain places when it's appropriate. So obviously the right tactic for the right time at the right place, right? So we're excited to be involved, and I know a couple of you on the call here are members, so thanks for your activism and your support.
Thank you so much, Garrett. I really appreciate that. And that's one of the key things is I think we can move this across the veteran aisle, if you will, and that'll help us even further kind of expand that circle and keep getting it out into the popular area. And that's the coolest part of Vets for Peace, having the local chapters where they do, there's pros and cons, but they do organize and they do have their ways of getting people, getting into things. And now I'm going to bring it to Mike Rufo, who has an interesting concept of how to maybe generate some more traction for this and start kind of from a very ground up level.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me on, Scott. You putting all of these, I'm going to say titans together on one Zoom. We got Dan, we got everybody that, is really a part of this, Mike, everyone just coming together and talking about exactly why this is so important. And it was listening to Dan on podcasts and, that really got my attention of the Defend the Guard Act about a year and a half ago, maybe. And then it was their involvement with YAL when YAL had come around and started talking to me last year. And it's just, I'm not a veteran, but I have a lot of friends and family who are veterans. And I live in New Jersey, where we have the Earl Naval Base and we have the Joint Base, McGuire, Lakehurst, and Dix. So we had Fort Monmouth for a long time, and they defunded that, and that's an empty shell of what it used to be. But for me, I'm trying to figure out a way of how to get people to pay attention to it. And with the election coming up, I wasn't sure which route to take, because had Trump won, we'd be able to lay on the ears of the Democrats and try and get the Democrats on our side to perhaps pass the bill. But in New Jersey, being that we are as strongly Democrat as we are, with Biden now winning, the odds on me getting the Democrats to now pay attention to us based on the picks for all of his cabinet positions thus far, I don't think are very great. So going directly to the legislator really isn't an option. We can't go to our legislators because A, we don't have any Ron Paul-like Republicans in New Jersey at all. There's not one liberty-minded Republican in the state house. And we have our Democrats. So my goal was to get attention from the public. 2018, 2019, we had the Second Amendment sanctuary movement here in New Jersey, where we had, I believe, 12 different counties at minimum and many different municipalities passed a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution. And it got press all over the state, and it got the attention of legislators, and it got the attention of some actual major media across the country, and some people even in Washington, D.C. So my thought was, I can get attention with this bill if I can start getting townships that are affected by having their National Guard, the National Guard sent out. We have all of these military families in the Ocean County area and in the Monmouth County area whose lives are affected when they're out of nowhere, their National Guard reservists or whomever are sent overseas for these foreign wars that weren't approved. They're not congressionally approved. So I started working with the guy who was the president of the New Jersey Second Amendment sanctuary that got all of those sanctuary resolutions passed. We've taken the 10th Amendment center language, we've turned it into a bit of a resolution, basically just replacing the words where it says enact, and just making it be resolution language using the exact same format. We put a letter together, and we're going to have 4 to 5 veterans write letters to go directly to all of the town councilmen. And we're going to bring people, 10, 15, 20 people at a clip, to town council meetings and to county level meetings for our county government as well, to see if we can get it passed on. We call them freeholders. They're commissioners. They'll be commissioners on January 1st. So all of our county commissioners, we're going to be in their faces for 10 or 20 people. I know in Ocean County, we're allowed 5 minutes public comment for anybody at any time when you go to a meeting at the county commissioner. We're going to bring a line of people. We're going to the Ocean County Commissioners meeting, and we're all going to give 5-minute speeches on why this resolution needs to be passed on the county level. And we're going to force the hand of the state legislator to pay attention to what we're doing. And if it takes me an extra year to get this bill on the floor or to get some legislator to pick it up, at least I know I'll have public backing, or we'll have public backing behind it. And for us, it's twofold, right? We're libertarians. We're the Libertarian Party. For me to get a legislator to pay attention to me is hard enough as it is. But if I can get all the townships and the counties to start paying attention to us, for them to start looking at this bill as something that could really have an effect on the way Congress acts and the way our federal government works, and to start decentralizing everything, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. We've already got marijuana legalization done here. They're already trying to pass psilocybin. There's not enough of the traditional libertarian local action that I can take. This is the step that we've decided we're going to take with the New Jersey Libertarian Party. So hopefully that gives a couple of people some ideas in states that you're having a little bit of resistance with your legislators paying attention to you. You are far more likely to get the town councilman that you know, who goes to the same diner as you, who doesn't get paid a ton of money and doesn't have that many donors lining their pockets. So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully if there's any advice anybody can give me, I'd greatly appreciate it, because this is my first foray in trying to get this type of legislation attention.
Hey, I've got quick advice. I don't want to chew time, but you mentioned getting 10 or 12 people all come to this council meetings. Take them 1 or 2 at a time and do the drip method and drive them nuts, because I've been at those meetings and we're like, shoot, good, we got all them out the door. And then they might show up one more time or whatever. But if you're dripping on them, then it'll drive them nuts and get them to act and put in the resolution to call on the state house to do this on behalf of the city or whatever you got going on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That's Mike. That's exactly. Go ahead, Dan.
I love you're talking about resolutions, and every legislator that's on here needs to know that getting a bill introduced is obviously the goal, and getting one passed is the touchdown, right? But if you move to get a bill introduced and we can't get over that first hurdle, you can't get it out of committee, you can't get a hearing on it. A resolution is a positive second step, and a resolution in the state house is something that can be done with privilege. You can do it if you're sitting on a committee. You can present that resolution in your own committee with privilege, and you can invite a veteran. You can invite the 10th Amendment Center. You can invite Bring Our Troops Home. You can invite Vets for Peace to come in and give the testimony for that resolution. We did it in Idaho last year. In Texas, they took a little bit different approach, and they actually amended the GOP party platform at the state level and have language in the party platform that the state Republican Party, the Texas State Republican Party, supports Defend the Guard legislation. That's another avenue you can take, is you can amend party platforms. One last step that we can talk about is resolutions at state party conventions. We've done that in Idaho also, where we've gone before the GOP state convention twice, presented the legislature or the resolution for Defend the Guard and supporting efforts to bring our troops home. And it failed the first time because we were seen as radicals. And the second time we came around, President Trump happened to be saying, let's end the endless wars, and everybody lined up to pass the resolution. It passed with a fairly significant majority. So legislation is obviously the key in the goal, but just because you can't get a piece of legislation passed, don't consider a resolution as a failure. We're all about any action, any progress. It's the snowball effect, right? That ball will eventually grow and grow and grow and grow. And so taking people to town halls and getting, like you said, sanctuary cities to pass it, or a county to accept the resolution, everything you do becomes newsworthy, and everything that's newsworthy spreads. And if all we have to do is get the right person, a Tucker Carlson or a CNN or something like that, to pick this up, pick up the message, and all of a sudden you've got a movement. And when you have a movement, you can stand back and watch. because it grows its own legs.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's why I like when Mike mentioned that, I was like, this is a great idea to kind of, again, we're building a movement is what we've got to do. I wanted to mention the other part about bringing together that group, that cadre. I think that's kind of almost we need to organize and is getting bipartisan, multi-partisan, non-partisan really, because this shouldn't be a partisan issue. Cadres together that can show up to events. That's what I need to work on here, and I think because I think that's what we need to do. Is that's what got me motivated was showing up to the state capitol event, and we need to maybe start trying to put together state house events too.
Right, and Scott, one note on that. When we first started the concept of bring our troops home, it started with Ben Adams, who's on the call here. He was in the college, the Boise State University Political Science Club, and I wanted to have this conversation. We didn't know how to do it. So I reached out to Boise State and got a hold of the Political Science Club, and they referred me to Ben, and that's how I met Ben. And then I called the College Republicans, and they referred me to Price, who I think is on the call too, and he was the president of the College Republicans. And then I reached out to Joe Goody, who was the president of the College Democrats. And then I got Chris Ho, who was a Democratic candidate for the state legislature, and I got Tammy Nichols, who was a Republican legislator. And the five of us sat down in a public library meeting room, and Joe Evans was there with us. And we had a conversation about ending the war and what we could do on a bipartisan, I call it transpartisan, it's not bi. We're not talking about Republicans, Democrats. We're talking about Libertarians, Green Party, everybody. This is an issue that everybody should agree with unless you're just a bloodthirsty whore, and I don't see anybody on this call that is. So it's transpartisan. Don't limit yourself. You might find it quite enjoyable to reach across the aisle and find somebody that differs from you on every other policy except for this one. And they'll become some of your best friends because we're not really that different in life, right? So we should put the labels aside and just work towards the goal.
Yeah, I think on that powerful note, I think if anyone wants to, I'd like to ask if anyone else wants to be recognized, has something they'd like to add. I don't want to leave anybody out. I do want to respect people's time because we're already run 20 minutes over. I have time to continue this conversation. And it looks like we've got Joe would like to add something. But again, if anyone needs to bow out, you can bow out as you see fit, or just if you'd like me to, give me a wave and I can thank you for your time. But thank you all for the time you've given so far, and everyone who's staying. I'm going to hand it over to Joe now.
So I want to be able to build on what Dan did, because when I got out, I'd done 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 tour in Iraq. I got out of the Army. I was looking for movements, activity, anything that was peace oriented here in the Valley. And you start looking around, and at the time it was like the only people that were doing demonstrations against the war were the hardcore left. Our Party of Socialization and Liberation were the only ones out on the streets waving signs. And you start looking around and trying to figure things out. You realize the Libertarian Party has a big peace message. The Green Party has a big peace message. And you're looking at all of these different ways, and you start crashing political events. Like when I showed up at Dan's event, all I saw was an advertising for a meeting at the library for peace activism. And the beautiful thing was Dan was introducing it from the right. And this was the first time I'd actually seen anti-war activism from the conservative Republicans. And it was incredible because it allowed me to see the different language that resonated through the different organizations, trying to interpret what was going on, what the left was saying, what the right was saying, coming up with these solutions to the forever wars, and trying to find the way past that. So one of the things that worked for me over the last, I guess it's about 9 months now, was actually picking up and running for Congress, because that gave me a platform during the debates to actually mention bring our troops home. So when people tuned into the debates to look at what was going on between the Republicans and the Democrats and what they were talking about, I was able to interject. It's like 20 years of war, folks. 20 years. Isn't it time to end it? Isn't it time to come home? So literally, the Democrats and Republicans had to both listen and respond and react to that throughout the campaign as we continue to move on. So continue to crash events, speak up, speak out, And in a lot of these cases, I've shown up in events that were pre-planned by some other organization, just so I could get that 3 minutes, that 5 minutes where I get up and say, you know, our legislators, our congressmen, our senators, they're listening to you right now because everybody's out here. Everybody's standing on the steps. Everybody has something to say. So when you get an opportunity to show up in committee to say your piece about ending the forever wars, you know, when Dan goes back into legislative session here in January to present his Defend the Guard bill here in the state of Idaho, you know, there's people that have been standing on the steps rallying for Trump that are going to go, yes, I will do that. I will show up and support Dan McKnight in committee. And that's where you start seeing the street action actually pay out in the political venues.
That's fine, Brian. Thank you, Joe, very much. And Brian is a state legislator from Texas who'd like to add in his comments on the bill. And thank you again.
Happy to be here. Sorry I'm late. I thought it started Central Time, and I thought I was only going to be 15 minutes late.
All time is Texas time.
Well, yeah. Is there a difference? Yeah. So, no, I met Ben at a conference a few weeks ago, and he's the one that introduced me to Defend the Guard. And I saw him the next day. I was like, dude, I hate you. I've been thinking about that bill all night and all morning. And well, actually, I don't remember what it was. I couldn't find it. That's what it was. I spent half the day. I couldn't find it. I said, dude, you told me about this great bill. I couldn't find you. I was like, how am I going to find out about this? Well, we finally got reconnected. I guess it was almost 24 hours later. But anyway, I'm already have some people helping me get that to Ledge Council to draft it for Texas. I can't file a bill until I'm sworn in January, but I am filing.
That's awesome, Ryan. I really appreciate that. And that's what we're looking for, is to find a state legislature who kind of burns for that. We get that hook in. So I think barring any massive objections, I think it's time to wrap up and we'll close down the live stream. Anyone who wants to stick around to kind of shoot the, and trade ideas, trade concepts, we can keep going. But I think it's time to call it an evening formally, and thank you so much for everyone being here. This is awesome. It's energizing. It looks like we got a real shot of getting this bill moving and like over the hump in Hawaii this year, and we've got a bunch of other states where we're going to at least get it introduced and try to carry the ball forward. And so let's all not lose energy here. Once it's introduced, the fight isn't over. That's in fact probably the time for us to hammer every other state legislator we can find and call them out. And I think Dan probably has some information for those legislators that are on board. Thank you so much, Garrett. I really appreciate it. Have a great night. And Dan's going to, I think he's got something in line for the state legislators that are here that maybe they'll discuss strategy further forward, but I'll let Dan handle that. I'm going to close down the live stream and stop recording so you can all relax. And, thank you so much for everything tonight, guys, everyone. Bring our troops home.
Okay, folks, that's it.
Well, anybody sticking around real quick, we have information packets that we can make for your state. They have sample legislation. They've got background information. They've got commentary from the 10th Amendment Center. They've got an op-ed piece that Pat McGeehan wrote and submitted to his local newspaper that has gotten national attention. There's an article from the Mises Institute by Ryan McMakin. And then the last piece in here is Mike Meharry, who was on our call with us from the 10th Amendment Center. And we can get these out to your states, to you as a sponsor, to give out to your fellow legislators. We have an electronic format that we can get out to you that you can email to them if you prefer that. But these are nice. It's nice to have these. You can mark them up. You can hand it out. It presents really well, and they're unique to each state. So if you're interested in those, let me know. We're here to support the legislators that are here to support the Constitution. So I don't care what state you're in, what party you're in. If you're willing to push Defend the Guard, we're willing to go to war for you. And I don't use that term lightly. We're literally ready to go to war. And I think Vets for Peace is in the same boat. My group, it's in the same boat. Yal's in the same boat. I think anybody that's liberty loving, that loves our Constitution, loves our nation, that is abhorred by war, we're on your side.
Mike,